Hi, this is Matt Heffernan, and welcome back to my channel. This is the 11th episode of my series on the XCI tutorial. Now, XCI is an adventure game engine for the Commander X16, and it stands for Extremely Compact Interpreter. And it allows you to create point-and-click adventure games without having to write any assembly or basic code. And it's inspired by the adventure game engines from the sort of late 80s to early 90s, that first wave of point-and-click adventures, such as SCI and Scum, that created a lot of really classic games. And so I'm hoping to bring that sort of a 16-bit standard to an 8-bit platform, a new 8-bit platform that is a bit more capable. And that's what I think the Commander X16 gives us. Now, if you saw the last video, and if you haven't, please go back and watch it. Please watch the whole series and subscribe to my channel and really get to know what we're trying to do here with XCI. But if you've already seen that, please welcome back. And we saw in that previous video was how we created a music file. We did Mary Had a Little Lamb for this tutorial game that we've been creating. If we watch that, we'll see that it has a VGM encoding using the YM2151 chip, and it plays Mary Had a Little Lamb in a loop over and over. And as I mentioned in the previous video, we have up to 8K for each level to use up for sound, and that's both the music and sound effects. Now, that music file only took up just over 1K. So we've got almost 7K that we can use to have sound effects. And just as I chose the YM2151 over other options with the X16 for music, I've chosen to use the PCM capability, pulse code modulation, for doing sampled sound effects. So you can have that FM synthesized music using the YM2151 that loops over and over again, and then a set of sampled sound effects that you can use within each level. And then the software development kit for XCI can take all these files in and then just puts them all together into up to 8K chunk to be loaded into memory. So what do we actually put in these sound effects? How do we create them? Well, what I support is a raw PCM format, and in this case it uses 8-bit signed PCM, pulse code modulation, which is pretty standard. In fact, the telephone system uses 8-bit signed PCM. But unlike the phone system, which is meant for having legible or intelligible voice going across it, I don't care so much about voice. These sound effects are going to have to be pretty short and are really going to be more of a video game type sound effects, like gunshots and whatnot. So instead, I'm going to bring that down to save space to a 4,578 hertz sample rate, and of course strictly mono. We don't support stereo here. So by having only 8-bit samples at 4,578 samples every second, that means that 8 kilobytes of data would give you 1.789 seconds of PCM audio, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking about just short little tiny sound effects, little momentary bits of sound, you can get quite a few in there. And if we go back to the last video, you'll see we just have this bouncing ball going around, and the sound that a bouncing ball makes, it takes up much less than a second. In fact, we only gave a fifth of a second for even acknowledging that the bounce was happening, as we're going to see here in a minute. And of course, we can fit all of this data in there because we're not having any metadata within this raw format, but we're also not compressing it in any way because we're dealing with the 65 CO2 CPU, which is just simply not capable of doing like a real-time MP3 decoding. So let's take a look again at the game as we left it after the last video when we added the music. So we have the bouncing ball, which we'll see here, with Mary Had a Little Lamb going on in the background. And there it is, bouncing around. And we just have that little bounce text come up for that 1/5 of a second in which we're doing the bounce. Which we can see right here, where we have music, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then we see these little bounce followed by the wait 12s to say that, yep, and then a clear. So we're just getting, for those 12 jiffies or 1/5 of a second, we're seeing that word bounce come up. So what we want to be able to do is to have an actual bounce sound effect get put in at that same time. So how do we do that? Again, looking back here, this is not a format that you're going to get really any sort of off-the-shelf sound, nor is it like the default settings of any sort of tool to create this sort of sound effect. So what we're going to have to do is take whatever we can find or record and convert it to this format. And we're not going to try recording sound here today. We're just going to go ahead and find some sound. And the nice thing is, if we go on YouTube, and here's my channel, and if you're not a subscriber already, please do subscribe. I've got 139 subscribers now. I'm getting a new subscriber pretty much every day, which I think is pretty amazing that people really are responding to all of these videos that I'm creating, and I hope that it keeps up. And anyway, if you go on YouTube and go over here, you can see YouTube Studio, where you can manage your own content on YouTube. And part of that content is adding audio. Now, if any of you are YouTubers yourselves, you should be aware of what the whole copyright strike situation is on YouTube. That if you used any sort of copyrighted music or video with in one of your videos, then what ends up happening is that YouTube will take any money that they might have been giving you if your channel was monetized to the copyright holders of that work. And so even if you're just using that little bit of music in there, the songwriter for that music is going to get all the royalties, all the actual ad dollars for your video, even though they had nothing to do with creating it. It's not really fair, but that's the way it is. So to get around that, as you've probably noticed, a lot of YouTube channels use the same music to avoid that situation, so they don't have their content demonetized. And you'll hear the same music pieces over and over and over again. And because there's this library, it's still pretty large. There's a lot of music out there. But people tend to gravitate to different sort of music. But what a lot of people probably don't realize is there's also sound effects in there, which is a really great resource that the creators of all this music and sound effects have allowed people to just download and use them for free and as much as they want, which is a really great resource. So what we're going to do is try to find like a bouncing sound effect. So we're going to look up bounce. And let's see, what we got here? We got basketballs, we got things, but hey, a dodgeball bounce. Now that sounds interesting because if you remember, the actual ball that we have there, it kind of looks like a dodgeball. It's very stretchy and it's red. And let's listen. Oh, it sounds pretty good. So what we could do is just go ahead and use this. Now, even though it is 36 seconds, obviously we're not going to use the whole thing, but we can get that cut down. So let's go ahead and download it. And you see it's an MP3, so it's already compressed. And we look here in downloads and see, yeah, it's 1.4 megs. We're going to be chopping the crap out of this thing. So let's go ahead and open it up in Audacity. And now I'm recording again. Audacity does shut off my mic, which I've learned the hard way. So now that we have it open in Audacity, we can see it's a stereo sound. It uses 32-bit floating point samples. And it's at 44.1 kilohertz, which is CD quality. It's actually better than CD quality. That's the CD quality sample rate, and CDs are actually 16-bit PCM. So this is better than CD quality, and so we certainly do not need that. First things first, let's go ahead and cut it right in half. We're going to go down to mono, just take one of the channels. We don't really care which one. And here we go. And now we've got all these bounces. We only really want one bounce. And that first bounce, that sounded pretty good. Yeah. All right, so we're just going to use that. So let's go ahead and delete all the lead up. And we're going to delete the rest. And go back to the beginning. And this is all we're going to get. That seems to be quite enough. And as you can see, it is not very long. In fact, here it is, yeah, like what, 0.4 seconds. It is pretty small. So what we need to do now is to get this into the correct format. Now, first things first is we have to set the correct rate. And as we saw before, the sample rate that we need to go down to is 4,578. And so we're going to go down from 44 kilohertz, so it's like almost 1/10 of sample rate. So now if we look at this, we can see there's a lot of fine detail in there. We got a lot of samples going on. We're going to be getting rid of a lot, like 9 out of 10 of those. So 4, 5, 7, 8. And now we can see we've lost, we're going to lose a lot of that detail when we sample down to that. So we set the project, and then we got to resample that track. Oops. Let me actually select the track. There we go. Let's resample that, and you notice it automatically now takes that project rate of 4578 and does that, and now you can see we've lost a lot of information already. And if we go ahead and play that again, it's a lot much duller sound, if you will. It's not, doesn't have all those nice high frequency components in it anymore. And we're also going to be losing some of that sort of amplitude fidelity too once we resample down. So let's do that now. Let's get it down to the format that we need. So we're going to do an export audio, and we're going to pick here other uncompressed files. We don't want like a WAV file, because that has even if we did it with the 8-bit, it would still have a header on it. So we don't want to have any metadata. So we're going to go other compressed files, and we're going to do the raw headerless, so it's just the PCM data. Signed 8-bit, we don't want the 16-bit or the 32-bit float like it currently is. So we're going to get down to that 8-bit, and we're going to go ahead and save it in this template directory that we have. So let's save that, and we're going to say OK. And now if we look here, we'll see dodgeball bounce .raw. There it is. Now, how do we actually get it in the game? So let's go back to our slides, and we're going to go down to the next slide. So there's two instructions that you need to add sound effects to games. The first is the sound instruction. And the sound instruction just associates an ID with a file name. So we have the file name, and we're going to give it a shorter ID that we can then reference with the play instructions. So that we can just say play bounce. We'll use bounce for an ID. So we're going to say that that sound, which is dodgeball bounce.raw, we're just going to give it the ID bounce. So if we look here in the documentation, here in the main README, I do go over some of that, and I have this section here about these sound effects files, how you can, different ways of creating them, including using socks to convert existing files that are already at the correct length, if you don't need to do editing. And then here in the syntax guide, I talk about the sound and play instructions. So let's go ahead and do this sound. So we're going to say sound, bounce, and then the file name, because bounce will be the ID. So, excuse me, sound, and we're calling it bounce. Dodge, oops, let's spell it right. Dodgeball bounce.raw. And then here, every time we do the text bounce, we'll say play bounce. And there it is. And that's it. That's how we add the sound effect. And now we're going to do that. Every time we do the text bounce, we're going to play bounce. So we'll have 4 instances of that sound effect. We'll go ahead and save that. And let's rebuild And now we'll run it and let's see what it sounds like. And there it is. It actually kind of sounds like a dodgeball, doesn't it? Listen. Not bad, and even you can hear it over the music, which is great. Now, if you wanted to just hear what the sound effect sounds like, you can always kill the music. And we're going to go back, do a new game, because that's right at the first level. There it is. There's the sound. Not too bad, right? So that's what it kind of sounds like. Here, if I kill the sound effect. Oh, now we got nice silence. We have no sound coming in. But I could always add the music back and add the sound effects back. And if I replay it, we'll get the whole deal again. And there it is. So not too bad. So that's it. That's all it takes to add sound to your game. We've covered the music, and now we've covered the sound effects. And I hope you decide that that wasn't too scary, that it's probably a lot less scary than the music. It's a very simple set of tools that they're all free to use. You can get the sound effects for free, and you can get XCI for free. And currently you can get the emulator for the Commander X16 for free. And you can go ahead and start building and creating and playing your own games right now. And with this video, I've now gone over all of the different aspects of creating the game, how you add all the different elements. So the next video is going to be sort of putting all of that together. And we're going to go and review some of these different pieces that I've covered, and we're going to see what that actually looks like, how you can get this, what we kind of started, and we'll sort of finish it up, make it a real game, even though it's kind of a silly, janky little game, but it'll still be complete. And that's what we'll get out of this tutorial. And what I hope what you get out of it is some inspiration to go ahead and learn something new and maybe create something, especially at this time where we're all kind of stuck at home. You may be out of work, but you could do more than just sit at home and watch TV. You could actually create something and then learn something new. And when you look back on this time, you'll remember it as this time that, yeah, I took on this new challenge and I have this thing that I can now give to the world that I've created. And that's my memory that I'm going to be bringing back from this time. And so I hope you take that into consideration, and I hope you also subscribe to the channels and click on that bell to get those notifications so that when the next video comes out, it's coming right at you. And I hope you stay home and you stay safe and you stay well. And I will see you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.